Hi, I'm John Crossman, and welcome to What Does a Video Cost? In this short segment, we're going to talk briefly about post-production as the third phase in video production. There are three phases: pre-production, production, and post. Post-production is where all of the elements that you've captured, the scripts that you've written, any elements that are going to be in the video, that's where it all gets put together. Many times graphics are done in post-production. Usually they are. If they were very extensive, you might have somebody working on graphics as you're shooting, but in my experience, most of the time graphics are part of post-production. If there's custom music that needs to be done, that's also put in as part of the post-production process. So there's lots of the final pieces, and that's where it all comes together. It's probably the least understood because people don't think much about how much time it takes to plan, and of course they figure you're shooting a 10-minute thing, how long can that take? And it could take anywhere from, a Super Bowl commercial that takes a month to shoot for 60 seconds because of the complexity of it to, a video like this, which will take exactly as long as it lasts to shoot because it's very simple production. It's not meant to be overly polished. It's just to get the information out there. But then when it comes to editing, the time is impacted geometrically. I started editing in news, and in news we figured an hour per finished minute. So a typical report on the news at that time might be 90 seconds. We would figure you would need an hour and a half to cut that in an average circumstance. You look at the footage that was shot for it, which could be, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes worth of footage, depending on the story and if it had multiple locations. The reporter would put together a script. They would put their voice on an audio cart, and I would get the raw tapes and the script and a printed script and the audio, of course, and I would sit down and start working on it, and you could plan on it taking about 90 minutes. There's a major difference in editing between what we call scripted content, which would be a news story, and unscripted content, which would be like a reality show. I had the opportunity to edit almost a season of a reality show a few years back. It was aired in 95% of the country, so it was a national show, and we would get 85 hours of video, and audio, raw video for each show. It all had to be digitized into a computer. At that time, with that technology we had, that was a real-time function. So you have 85 one-hour tapes, and it's going to take 85 hours. In a 40-hour work week, that means it's going to take 2 weeks just to put the footage into the computer so that you can start looking at it and start editing it. So the time really is a multiple of how much time has been put into the project to that far. Scripted, you still have, getting the footage in, becoming familiar with it. I believe any good editor, even if it's a scripted show that has multiple takes or multiple cameras, you will watch each scene in real time from each camera angle and make notes. Oh, the reaction's really good on camera too at this point, or somebody walked in front of the camera at this point, so make sure that we're not on that camera. And the editor watches that, makes notes. Maybe he gets notes from the production, but at the end of the day, they're responsible for putting it together, so they have to know what they're working with, and that's another word for taking time. A lot of projects I work on these days, I used to really just be an editor, but now I do a lot of shooting as well because of the way that business has changed. And at this point, it's still, I know that the last take is probably the best take. But if I look at it when in the field, I thought it was the best take, I get back here and look at it and I go, I didn't notice that blah, blah, blah was happening. So let me see if I have a different take. Well, that can take, 30, 40 minutes to go back through all of the takes that were shot in the field and find the one that you think is actually the best take. The end result is 30 seconds or 20 seconds of video, but it took you an hour to do that 20 seconds. So that's how the time gets so blown up in editing. Editing usually follows, good editing follows what we call storyboard conventions, storytelling conventions rather. And we'll talk more about that in some later things. They're basically updated versions of what you would have learned in school about storytelling, middle, introduction, beginning, middle, end, that kind of thing. But we'll talk about that later. Editing, like I had said earlier, also involves graphics and audio, and there's a whole other genre in post of audio sweetening, where they can reduce noise and they can add sound effects and they can do all kinds of things with that. There's an industry inside joke called, well, we'll fix that in post. And sometimes there are things that happen in the field that you just can't, overcome. And so you do have to fix it in post. But that's the most expensive way to do production, is to try to fix it at the end, because obviously you don't have the resources that you had when you were in the field. And so it can be very expensive to try to fix errors that were captured that way. All editors have ended up doing that. Editing is really and we'll talk more about this in a later segment, but I view editing as heavy-duty decision-making, all day long, and many people don't like that. The technology today allows you to waffle a little bit or to cut many different versions without, causing any harm, except it all takes time. So in most cases, most projects, you don't get to edit 3 different versions just to see how it would look. An editor is charged with making the best decisions as quickly as possible and getting it done as quickly as possible. So that's the third phase of the video production process, is post-production. We'll talk more in the segments to come about what specifics you need to think about in each of the 3 phases: pre-production, production, post-production. Some common pitfalls that happen and ways that you can hopefully adapt. All this is in a way to get around to the point of, what does a video actually cost? And when you ask a professional like myself, what does a video cost? I'll go back to what I said in the first video, and that is, it's like building a house. It depends what you want in it. And so we'll talk more about the individual elements and how they impact the cost of a video in segments to come. My name's John Crossman. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.